The fluorescent lights in the mortuary office hummed above me as I held the pen over the cremation authorization form. My hand was shaking. I'd been crying for 2 weeks straight since Richard's sudden heart attack, and I just wanted this nightmare to end. Sign the papers, cremate my husband, scatter his ashes at the lake where we got engaged. That's what Marcus, my son, kept telling me. Mom, you need closure. Dad wouldn't want you dragging this out. The funeral director had stepped out to take a phone call, leaving me alone with his young assistant, a petite Japanese woman in her late 20s who'd been unusually quiet during our meeting. I was about to sign when I felt her hand grip my wrist, hard. Don't. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it was urgent, desperate. Please, don't sign that. I looked up, startled. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with what I can only describe as terror. She was trembling. I don't understand, I stammered. In 12 minutes, Mr. Riverside will be back, she said, her English precise despite her obvious fear. I'm going to lose my job for this, maybe worse, but I can't. Her voice cracked. Please, I need to show you something. Before I could respond, she pulled out her phone with shaking hands and swiped through her photos. I'm Dr. Tanaka, Yuki Tanaka. I'm the junior mortician who prepared your husband's body. I noticed things that didn't match the death certificate. My heart started pounding. What things? She turned her phone toward me, and I saw photographs, clinical, detailed autopsy-style photographs that made my stomach turn. These are petechial hemorrhages in his eyes, these marks on his neck that were concealed by his collar, the discoloration of his fingernails, the liver damage visible through the abdominal wall. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the desk. What are you saying? Mrs. Mitchell, I'm saying your husband didn't die of a heart attack. She pulled up another photo, a toxicology reference chart with numbers highlighted in red. I took samples, unofficial samples. I had a friend at the lab run them off the books. Your husband had lethal levels of digoxin in his system. That's a heart medication. Was he prescribed digoxin? No, I whispered. The word barely made it past my lips. He wasn't on any heart medications. His doctor said his heart was fine. Yuki's eyes filled with tears. Someone poisoned him, and if you cremate him today, that evidence disappears forever. I could get sued for showing you this. I could go to jail for taking those samples without authorization. But I have a grandmother your age, and if someone murdered her, I'd want someone to tell me. She gripped my hand. Please, wait. Please just trust me. I sat there, staring at those photos on her phone screen. My Richard's body, marked by something I didn't understand, evidence of something I couldn't quite process yet. My mind was reeling. Was she telling the truth? Was this some kind of scam? Some sick joke? But I looked into her eyes and saw genuine terror, and something else. Conviction. The kind of conviction that comes from risking everything because staying silent would be worse. The door handle turned. Mr. Riverside was coming back. I won't sign, I said quickly, my voice stronger than I felt. Tell him I need more time. Yuki nodded, relief flooding her face as she pocketed her phone. But as the funeral director walked back in with his practiced, sympathetic smile, one thought kept echoing in my mind, louder than everything else. If Richard was poisoned, who would want him dead? And why was my son so insistent that I cremate the body today? Where are you watching from right now? Because I need you to understand. 2 minutes ago, I was about to destroy the only evidence that my husband was murdered. And I had no idea that the young woman who stopped me had just saved my life too. Let me back up and tell you how this nightmare really started. My name is Dorothy Mitchell. I'm 67 years old, and 3 months before that moment in the funeral home, life was beautifully, wonderfully ordinary. Richard and I had just celebrated our 42nd wedding anniversary at our favorite Italian restaurant, the same place where he'd proposed back in 1984. He ordered the veal marsala like he always did. I had my usual chicken piccata. We talked about finally taking that trip to Scotland we'd been planning for years, the one we kept putting off because there was always something: raising Marcus, building the business, dealing with life. "Once this Riverside property deal closes," Richard said, squeezing my hand across the candlelit table, "we're booking it. Non-refundable tickets. You and me and the Scottish Highlands." I smiled at him. My husband was 69, still sharp as a tack, still working deals, still making me laugh after all those years. We'd built a good life together in our colonial house in Connecticut. He'd grown his father's small real estate business into a portfolio worth over $3 million. I'd taught third grade for 33 years before retiring 5 years earlier. We had our routines: bridge on Thursdays with the Greenwoods, Sunday dinners with Marcus and Vanessa, morning walks around the neighborhood. Life felt safe, predictable, good. Our son Marcus was our only child, and I'll be honest with you, have you ever loved someone with your whole heart but still worried about them constantly? That was how I felt about Marcus. He'd struggled in school, struggled to keep jobs, struggled with money. His marriage to Vanessa 6 years ago had surprised us. She came from money, worked in marketing for some pharmaceutical company, and seemed so polished, so put together. A little cold, maybe, but Marcus seemed happy. That's all we wanted. The first strange thing happened about 6 weeks before Richard died. Marcus started showing up at our house unannounced, multiple times a week. Now, I loved seeing my son, what mother doesn't, but for years he'd been too busy to visit more than twice a month. Suddenly he was dropping by Tuesday mornings, Thursday afternoons, Saturday evenings, always with some excuse. "Just in the neighborhood, Mom. Wanted to borrow Dad's drill. Thought I'd check on you guys. But here's what bothered me, and I want you to tell me if I'm being paranoid or if you would have noticed this too. He always seemed to angle for time alone with Richard. 'Hey, Dad, can you help me look at that leak in my car?' They'd disappear into the garage for an hour. 'Dad, I need advice on this investment thing.' They'd shut themselves in Richard's study. One evening after Marcus left, I found Richard sitting at his desk, staring at his computer screen, with this troubled expression I'd never seen before. 'Everything okay?' I asked from the doorway. He startled slightly, like I'd caught him at something. 'Oh, yeah, fine.' But he closed his laptop quickly. Too quickly. 'Marcus is just going through something financially. I told him I'd help him think it through.' 'Is it serious?' 'Nothing we can't handle.' He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. 'Don't worry about it, Dot.' I should have pressed harder. God, I should have pressed harder. About a month before he died, Richard mentioned something over breakfast that made my stomach twist, though I didn't understand why at the time. 'Dot, have you seen any papers around here that I might have signed? Legal-looking documents?' I looked up from my coffee. 'What kind of documents?' 'That's just it. I'm not sure. My accountant called yesterday asking about some transfer forms, said they had my signature, but I don't remember signing anything like that. Could you have forgotten?' He gave me a look that was almost annoyed. I'm 69, not senile. I'd remember signing papers about liquidating investment accounts. 'Liquidating?' My heart skipped. 'Richard, what?' 'I'm sure it's just a mix-up,' he said quickly, waving his hand dismissively. 'Probably just someone at the office filing wrong. I'll sort it out.' But 3 days later, I overheard him on the phone with someone. His voice was tight with frustration, and he was in his study with the door almost closed. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was just walking past with laundry. 'I'm telling you, that's not my signature,' he said sharply. 'Well, it looks like my signature, but I never authorized. Look, just freeze everything until I can come down there in person.' I stood in the hallway, my arms full of folded towels, my heart pounding for reasons I couldn't quite name. Then the Sunday dinners started making him sick. For 5 weeks before he died, we had dinner at Marcus and Vanessa's house every Sunday. It was Vanessa's idea. She'd suddenly become very insistent about family time. Every Sunday at 6 o'clock without fail. She'd cook these elaborate meals, set the table with her expensive china, play the perfect hostess. And every Sunday night, Richard got violently ill. The first time we thought it was food poisoning. The second time we joked, well, Richard joked, that maybe Vanessa wasn't as good a cook as she claimed. By the fourth time, Richard said, maybe I'm developing some kind of food intolerance. But here's the thing that haunts me now, the thing that keeps me awake at night. I ate the exact same meals, the exact same portions, every single Sunday. And I never got sick, not once. Maybe you just have a stronger stomach, Richard joked weakly after the sixth Sunday dinner, as I held his hair back while he vomited into our toilet. I made him a doctor's appointment. Dr. Patterson ran blood work, did an EKG, checked everything. The results came back normal. Probably stress-related, the doctor said with a shrug. Maybe gastritis. Try some omeprazole and see if that helps. Looking back, I wonder if Dr. Patterson even listened to us. If he'd just paid attention, but I can't think about that. Not yet. The third thing that made me uncomfortable was Vanessa's sudden interest in our financial arrangements. It started casually. We'd be having coffee while the guys were in the garage, and she'd say things like, Dorothy, do you and Richard have everything set up? You know, legally, in case something happens? What do you mean? I asked. Oh, you know, wills, trusts, life insurance. Marcus worries about you too. You're getting older, and it's important to have things in order. I bristled at that. We're not exactly ancient, Vanessa, and yes, we have wills. What about life insurance? Marcus mentioned Richard has quite a substantial policy. How did Marcus know about Richard's life insurance? We'd never discussed it with him. That was private. That was our business. That's really private, Vanessa, I said, trying to keep my voice pleasant but firm. Of course. I'm sorry. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm just thinking about Marcus. You know, making sure he's taken care of if something happens to you guys. We're family. It's natural to think about these things. But it didn't feel natural. It felt invasive. Predatory, almost. When I mentioned it to Richard that night, something shifted in his expression. Vanessa was asking about our life insurance today, I said. He looked up from his book. What? Why? She said Marcus worries about our arrangements. Richard set his book down slowly. That's the second time this month someone's brought up my life insurance. Marcus asked me about it 2 weeks ago. Said something about making sure the beneficiaries were updated. What did you tell him? I told him it was none of his damn business. Richard rarely swore. Dot, I need to tell you something. I think Marcus might be in deeper financial trouble than he's letting on. I found some papers in his car last week when I borrowed it, credit card statements. He's got over $200,000 in debt. My blood went cold. 200,000? Could be gambling. I saw charges to online poker sites, sports betting apps. He rubbed his face, suddenly looking every one of his 69 years. I was going to talk to him about it, offer to help him get into counseling or something. Did you? Not yet. I wanted to figure out the right approach. He never got the chance. 2 weeks later, on a Sunday evening, after another dinner at Marcus and Vanessa's house, Richard collapsed in our kitchen. I called 911, screaming, crying, begging him to stay with me. The paramedics worked on him for 20 minutes right there on our kitchen floor. But by the time we got to the hospital, he was gone. Massive heart attack, the ER doctor said, her voice professionally sympathetic. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Mitchell. It was very sudden. He didn't suffer. Marcus and Vanessa arrived at the hospital within an hour. Marcus held me while I sobbed. Vanessa made phone calls, handled logistics, took charge. They were so helpful, so supportive, so caring. Looking back now, knowing what I know, I remember how quickly, how urgently, Vanessa started talking about arrangements. "Dorothy, we need to choose a funeral home," she said gently, just hours after Richard died. "I know this is horrible timing, but these decisions can't wait. I can't think about that right now." "I know. That's why we're here. Marcus and I will help you with everything." She squeezed my hand with what I thought was compassion. "We've already researched funeral homes. Riverside Memorial has excellent reviews. They can handle everything: cremation, memorial service, everything." Cremation. I'd never thought about it. We'd never discussed it. "It's what Richard would have wanted," Marcus said quickly. "Remember, Mom? He always said he didn't want people gawking at his body in a casket." Had he said that? I couldn't remember. Everything was a blur of grief and shock. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus and Vanessa were at my house constantly, making calls, handling paperwork, being so helpful. And constantly, gently, insistently, pushing for immediate cremation. "The funeral home says we should do it within 2 weeks, Vanessa explained, sitting at my kitchen table like she belonged there. "It's better that way, more hygienic, and it'll help you move forward, get closure." "We've scheduled it for Thursday," Marcus added. "I hope that's okay. I know you're not thinking clearly right now, so Vanessa and I just went ahead and arranged everything. We're just trying to help, Mom." I was too grief-stricken to argue, too exhausted to question, so I agreed. And that's how I ended up in that funeral home office 2 weeks after my husband died, pen in hand, about to sign the authorization that would destroy the only evidence that Richard had been murdered. About to erase the proof that my own son had poisoned his father. I walked out of that funeral home in a daze, clutching Dr. Tanaka's business card in my trembling hand. She'd scribbled her personal cell phone number on the back in rushed handwriting. "Call me any time. Don't tell anyone I showed you this. And please, don't cremate until you know the truth." Marcus was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his BMW, scrolling through his phone. When he saw me emerge without the signed papers, his expression flickered, just for a second. Was it confusion? Annoyance? I couldn't tell, but I saw it. "Mom, everything okay? Did you sign the authorization?" I forced myself to smile, to lie, to pretend I was still the grief-stricken widow who trusted him completely. "They need a few more days. Something about paperwork, state requirements." "What?" His voice had an edge to it. "That doesn't make sense. I spoke to Riverside yesterday. He said everything was ready to go. Well, apparently there's some issue with the death certificate or something." I made my voice small, confused, the grieving widow who couldn't handle details. "I don't know, honey. I couldn't follow all the legal jargon. Can we just go home? I'm exhausted." He studied my face for a long moment, and I swear I saw suspicion flash in his eyes. But then he nodded. "Sure, Mom. Of course. I'll drive you." "No." I said it too quickly, and I saw him notice. "No, I drove myself. I need the independence. You understand? Mom, you're not thinking clearly. Let me drive you home and Vanessa can pick up your car later." "Marcus," I said no. I unlocked my car with shaking hands. "I appreciate everything you're doing, but I need to be alone right now, please." I drove home in a fog of terror and disbelief. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Was Dr. Tanaka telling the truth? Could Richard really have been poisoned? And if so, who would— No. No, I couldn't let my mind go there. Not yet. But when I got home and walked into our empty house, Richard's reading glasses still on the coffee table, his coffee mug in the sink, the smell of his cologne lingering in our bedroom, I couldn't stop seeing those autopsy photos, the petechial hemorrhages, the discolored fingernails, the toxicology results showing lethal levels of digoxin, a heart medication Richard had never been prescribed. I went to Richard's study, the room I'd barely been able to enter since he died. Everything was exactly as he'd left it, his fountain pen next to his desk calendar, a half-finished crossword puzzle, family photos on the bookshelf, Marcus as a baby, Marcus's graduation, our anniversary trip to Maine. I sat at his desk and opened his laptop. The password screen appeared. I typed in our anniversary date, the password he used for everything. Incorrect password. My heart skipped. I tried his birthday, my birthday, Marcus's birthday. Nothing worked. When had Richard changed his password? And why? I tried our dog's name from when Marcus was little. Still nothing. Then, on impulse, I tried Scotland 2026, the trip we'd been planning. The screen unlocked. My hands were shaking as I opened his email. And that's when I found the first piece of evidence that Richard had known something was terribly wrong. An email from Richard to his accountant, Jim Brennan, dated 3 weeks before he died. Jim, I'm telling you, those transfer authorizations are forged. I never signed anything moving money from my investment accounts to that trust account. Check the signatures against my signature card. I guarantee they won't match. Someone is trying to steal $800,000 from me, and I have a sick feeling I know who. $800,000. Someone was trying to steal $800,000 from Richard before he died. I scrolled down to the accountant's response. Richard, I've compared the signatures. You're right. There are discrepancies. I'm freezing all accounts immediately and filing a fraud report. Do you want me to contact the police? But there was no response from Richard. That email had been sent 2 days before he died. I sat there staring at the screen, my stomach churning. My mind was racing. Richard had known. He'd known someone was stealing from him, and he'd suspected who. I kept searching through his emails, and I found more. So much more. An email to his lawyer. I need to discuss changing my will and life insurance beneficiaries. Something's come up with Marcus that concerns me. Can we meet this week? An email to Dr. Patterson. These episodes after Sunday dinners are getting worse. Is there any chance someone could be deliberately making me sick? I know it sounds paranoid, but something doesn't feel right. Dr. Patterson had never responded to that email. An email to his bank. Please confirm that no one besides Dorothy Mitchell has authorization to access my accounts or safe deposit box. I need this in writing. Richard had known. Somehow he'd known something was wrong, and he'd been trying to protect himself, protect us, protect our assets. But he'd run out of time. I heard the front door open downstairs. Mom, it's us! Vanessa's voice, cheerful, helpful, concerned. I quickly closed the laptop and wiped my eyes. Up here, I called, trying to keep my voice steady. They appeared in the doorway, Marcus carrying grocery bags, Vanessa holding a casserole dish covered in foil. We brought dinner, Vanessa said warmly, smiling that smile that I'd once thought was kind. You need to eat, Dorothy. You're getting too thin. Every cell in my body screamed at me to throw them out, to accuse them, to scream at them. But I couldn't let them know I suspected anything. That's very thoughtful, I heard myself say. Thank you. I'll heat it up, Vanessa said, already heading downstairs. You just relax. As she left, Marcus lingered in the doorway. Mom, about the cremation. I called Riverside. He said there's no paperwork issue, that you just refused to sign. My heart hammered. I just need a little more time, honey. Time for what? To say goodbye, to process everything. I met his eyes, and it took everything I had not to flinch. Your father and I were married for 42 years. I can't just rush this. Something cold flickered in his expression, something I'd never seen before. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. Trust me, Mom. Quick and clean is better. Quick and clean, like destroying evidence. Maybe, I said carefully, but I need to do this my way. You understand, don't you? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, sure, Mom, whatever you need. But as he turned to leave, I saw him pull out his phone and start texting someone. His jaw was tight with frustration. They stayed for dinner. I forced down 3 bites of the casserole, It tasted like ashes in my mouth, and then quietly scraped the rest into the garbage disposal while they weren't looking. I couldn't eat anything they gave me. Not anymore. After they left, I sat alone in the dark house, my mind racing. I needed help. But who could I trust? I pulled out Dr. Tanaka's card and called her number. She answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Mitchell? You said your friend ran those tests off the books. Do you still have the samples? The evidence?" "Yes, I kept them in a secure freezer. They're safe." "Can you test for exactly what kind of digoxin was used, like the specific manufacturer or formulation?" There was a pause. "That's very specific. Yes, I could request that analysis. Why?" "Because I need to know where it came from, and I think I'm going to need that evidence." My voice broke. "Dr. Tanaka, I think my son..." "Mrs. Mitchell, are you saying you know who did this?" I closed my eyes. Saying it out loud would make it real. "I'm saying I need to know for sure before I accuse anyone, especially someone I love." "What do you need from me?" "Keep those samples safe. Don't tell anyone about them. And if anything happens to me, if I have any kind of sudden accident or illness, you call the police immediately. Promise me." "I promise." Her voice was fierce. "Mrs. Mitchell, please be careful. If someone murdered your husband and they think you're investigating..." "I know." My voice was barely a whisper. "I know." After I hung up, I did something I'd seen in a crime show once. I called my neighbor, Patricia Greenwood, my bridge partner for 15 years, the one person I trusted completely, and asked if I could come over. Patricia took one look at my face and poured us both bourbon. I told her everything. The autopsy photos, the forged documents, Richard's emails, his suspicions, the Sunday dinners that made him sick, the $800,000 someone had tried to steal. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a long time. "Dorothy," she finally said, "what you're describing sounds like murder. Premeditated, calculated murder." Hearing someone else say it out loud made it real, made it impossible to deny. I started crying, ugly, gasping sobs that I'd been holding back for hours. Patricia held my hand. "What do you want to do?" "I want to know the truth. I need to know if my son..." I couldn't finish the sentence. "Okay, then we investigate, carefully, quietly." Patricia's eyes were hard, determined. "I used to be a paralegal before I retired. I know how to dig up information without leaving fingerprints. And my son-in-law is a detective with the state police. If we find real evidence, we'll go to him." "What if we're wrong? What if I'm just being paranoid and grief-stricken?" "Then we'll find that out too. But Dorothy..." She leaned forward. "Everything you've told me, the forged signatures, the money transfers, the mysterious illness, the rush to cremate, that's not paranoia. That's a pattern." Over the next 3 days, Patricia and I became detectives. We went to Richard's bank with his death certificate and my power of attorney. The bank manager, a professional woman in her 50s, pulled up the account records. "There were several large transfers in the weeks before Mr. Mitchell's death," she explained, pointing to the screen with a manicured nail. 3 transfers totaling $800,000 went to a trust account called Mitchell Family Holdings Trust. Who authorized those transfers? According to our records, Mr. Mitchell did. He signed the authorization forms in person. "Can I see those forms?" She printed them out and slid them across the desk. And there was Richard's signature, except... I pulled out a Christmas card Richard had signed just a month before he died. I'd brought it with me, tucked in my purse. I compared the signatures side by side. They were close, very close. But Richard always made a specific flourish on the final L in Mitchell, a little loop he'd done since college, since before I'd even met him. The signatures on the bank forms didn't have that loop. "These aren't his signatures," I said quietly. The bank manager's eyes widened. "Mrs. Mitchell, if you're suggesting fraud..." "I'm not suggesting. I'm telling you. My husband didn't sign these. Someone forged them. We would need to file a formal complaint. possibly involve law enforcement. Not yet, I said quickly, my mind racing. I need to gather more evidence first, but I need you to freeze all accounts and reverse those transfers if you can. I can freeze the accounts immediately, but reversing transfers is more complicated, especially if the money has already been moved out of that trust account. She typed for a few minutes, and I watched her face go pale. Mrs. Mitchell, the trust account was opened 5 months ago. The signatory is Marcus Mitchell. And the money was withdrawn, all $800,000, 2 days after your husband died. The room spun. Where did it go? Multiple wire transfers, offshore accounts, cryptocurrency exchanges. She looked at me with something like pity. It's gone. $800,000. Stolen. While I was planning my husband's funeral, while I was crying over his coffin, while Marcus was holding me and pretending to grieve. That evening, back at Patricia's house, we made a list of everything we knew. Richard had been poisoned with digoxin. He'd been systematically made sick during Sunday dinners. Someone had forged his signature to steal $800,000. Marcus had withdrawn that money 2 days after Richard died. Marcus had gambling debts of over $200,000. Marcus and Vanessa were desperately pushing for immediate cremation. There's one more thing I need to check, I said. What? Vanessa works for a pharmaceutical company. I need to know if she has access to digoxin. Patricia pulled out her laptop. 20 minutes of research later, we had our answer. Vanessa Chen Mitchell worked for Cardiopharm Solutions, a company that manufactured cardiac medications, including digoxin. Oh God, I whispered, staring at the screen. Oh God. Patricia's face was grim. Dorothy, we need to go to the police, now. This is way beyond what we can handle. We don't have proof, just circumstantial evidence. They could claim Richard did sign those papers and just forgot. That his illness was natural and just happened to occur after Sunday dinners. Dorothy, they poisoned your husband and stole almost $1 million from him. I know. My hands were shaking. But Marcus is smart. Vanessa is smart. They've covered their tracks. If we go to the police now with just circumstantial evidence, they'll lawyer up immediately. And if there's any evidence left to find, they'll destroy it. So what do you want to do? I thought about Richard, about our 42 years together, about how he'd tried to warn people, tried to protect himself, and no one had listened in time. I want to catch them, I said quietly. I want irrefutable evidence. I want them to confess. And then I want them in prison for the rest of their lives. Patricia studied my face for a long moment. You're not the same woman I played bridge with 3 weeks ago. No, I agreed. I'm not. Because 3 weeks ago, I was a grieving widow who trusted her son. Now I was a woman who knew her son was a murderer. And I was going to prove it. Have you ever had to pretend everything is normal when your entire world has just shattered? That's what the next week of my life was like. I had to act like the confused, grieving widow. I had to smile when Marcus called. I had to accept Vanessa's casseroles and pretend to eat them. I had to play weak and helpless while secretly building a case that would destroy them both. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Patricia helped me install tiny cameras in my living room and kitchen. The kind you can order online, disguised as picture frames and smoke detectors. If they're planning something, Patricia said, we need to catch them on tape. She was right. 2 days after our trip to the bank, Marcus and Vanessa came over for what they called a family meeting. I'd invited them, playing the part perfectly. I need help with some paperwork, I'd said on the phone, making my voice tired and overwhelmed. I just can't figure out all these documents Richard left. They arrived within an hour. Of course we'll help, Mom, Marcus said, settling onto my couch like he owned it. Vanessa sat beside him, her hand on his knee, both of them wearing expressions of practiced concern. I brought out tea, though I'd learned my lesson about accepting anything they prepared for me. I made sure to pour from the same pot I drank from, to use cups that had been in my sight the entire time. So what paperwork do you need help with? Vanessa asked sweetly. Well, there are all these account statements and insurance policies, and I just feel so confused. I pulled out a folder, but not the real documents I'd found. Just random old statements that meant nothing. I thought maybe you could help me organize everything. I watched Marcus's eyes light up. This was what they'd been waiting for. Access. Absolutely, he said. In fact, Mom, it might be easier if you just gave me power of attorney. That way, I could handle all of this for you. You wouldn't have to worry about any of it. There it was, the trap closing. Power of attorney? I made my voice uncertain. I don't know. It's just a formality, Vanessa interjected smoothly. It would let Marcus sign documents on your behalf, manage the accounts, handle the estate. You've been through so much, Dorothy. Let us take care of the details. Let them take control of everything. Let them finish what they'd started. I suppose that makes sense, I said slowly. Do you have the forms? Actually, yes. Vanessa pulled papers from her purse. She'd brought them prepared. Of course she had. We had our lawyer draw them up, just in case you needed help. All you have to do is sign right here. She laid the papers on my coffee table and held out a pen. I looked at those papers and felt rage burn through me like acid. They'd planned this, probably for months, maybe years. Murder my husband, steal our money, and then get me to sign over control of everything that was left. Let me read through them first, I said, picking up the papers with trembling hands. But this time, the trembling was from fury, not fear. Marcus's jaw tightened, just slightly. Mom, it's pretty standard legal language. You don't need to. I want to read them. I kept my voice gentle but firm. Your father always told me never to sign anything without reading it first. I watched them exchange a look, a flash of frustration passing between them. Of course, Vanessa said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Take all the time you need. But I could feel their impatience radiating off them like heat. They needed this. They needed control before I discovered what they'd done. Too late. After they left, after I'd promised to think about it and maybe sign tomorrow, I played back the hidden camera footage. And there, after they thought I'd gone upstairs, I watched Marcus lean close to Vanessa and whisper, "She's stalling. She knows something." "She doesn't know anything," Vanessa hissed back. "She's just being difficult. Old people get paranoid. We need those signatures. If she talks to a lawyer before we get power of attorney..." "She won't. She's too grief-stricken to think straight. We just need to push harder." "And if pushing doesn't work?" Vanessa's voice dropped so low, I had to turn the volume all the way up to hear her response. Then we moved to Plan B. Plan B sent ice through my veins. I called Patricia immediately. "We need to move faster. I think they're planning something." The next morning, I met with a lawyer Patricia had recommended, a sharp woman in her 50s named Linda Chen, who specialized in elder law and estate fraud. I walked into her office with my 3-inch thick folder of evidence. Bank statements, emails, forged signatures, the hidden camera footage, Dr. Tanaka's preliminary toxicology results. Linda went through everything methodically, her expression growing harder with each page. "Mrs. Mitchell," she finally said, "what you're describing is systematic elder financial abuse combined with suspected homicide. This is serious. This is criminal. Can we prove it? We can prove the financial fraud, the forged signatures, the unauthorized transfers. That alone is enough for criminal charges." She tapped the toxicology results. "But this, if your husband was poisoned, and if we can prove who had access to the poison and motive to kill him, that's first-degree murder. What do I need to do? First, we protect your assets immediately. I'll file emergency motions to freeze all accounts, revoke any existing powers of attorney, and secure your property. Second, we document everything. Third," she looked at me seriously, "third, you need to decide if you're ready to go to war with your own son. Because once we start this, there's no going back." I thought about Richard, about the emails where he'd begged for help, about the Sunday dinners where he'd been systematically poisoned while I sat there eating the same food, completely unaware, about how he'd died on our kitchen floor while our son watched. "I'm ready," I said. Over the next week, Linda worked fast. She filed motions with the probate court. She contacted the police fraud division. She secured orders preventing Marcus or Vanessa from accessing any of Richard's accounts or assets. And she had Dr. Tanaka's friend run more detailed tests on those tissue samples. The results came back on a Thursday. Linda called me into her office and slid a report across her desk. The digoxin in your husband's system was a specific formulation, Lanoxin, manufactured by Cardiopharm Solutions, Vanessa's company. "There's more," Linda continued. "I had an investigator look into Vanessa's employment records. 3 months before your husband died, she accessed the medication storage room 17 times. Her job description doesn't require access to that room." "Can we prove she took the digoxin?" "Not directly, but we can prove access and opportunity. Combined with motive, Marcus's gambling debts and the stolen money, it builds a compelling case." "What about the life insurance?" I asked. Richard mentioned wanting to change the beneficiaries. Linda's expression darkened. "That's the worst part. I pulled the current life insurance policy. 6 months ago, the beneficiary was changed from you to Marcus. The change form has your husband's signature on it." "That's impossible. Richard would never—" "I know. I had a forensic document examiner look at it. It's forged, just like the bank transfers. $1.5 million in life insurance, made out to Marcus." "They were going to kill me too," I whispered. "Weren't they? After the cremation, after they got power of attorney, they were going to—" "Plan B," Linda said quietly. "Yes, I think so." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed in the dark, thinking about how close I'd come. If Dr. Tanaka hadn't stopped me, if I'd signed those cremation papers, if I'd eaten more of those casseroles, if I'd signed the power of attorney forms, I would be dead. My phone rang at 11:47 p.m. Marcus. "Mom? Did I wake you?" "No, honey, I can't sleep. What's wrong?" "I just wanted to check on you, see if you'd thought about those power of attorney papers." There was an edge to his voice, an urgency. "I'm still thinking about it," I said carefully. "Mom, I really think you should sign them. Tomorrow. I could come by in the morning and—" "Marcus, why are you pushing this so hard?" Silence. Then, "I'm not pushing. I'm trying to help you. Are you?" The words came out before I could stop them. Another pause. Longer this time. What's that supposed to mean? I could feel the shift in his tone, the wariness. I'd said too much. "Nothing, I'm sorry. I'm just tired and emotional. Let's talk tomorrow." "Mom, good night, Marcus." I hung up and immediately called Patricia. "I think I just tipped my hand. He knows I'm suspicious." "Then we need to move now," Patricia said. "Tomorrow we go to the police. We give them everything we have." The next morning, Linda, Patricia, and I met with Detective Raymond Cole from the State Police Homicide Division. He was a man in his 50s with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. We laid it all out, the timeline, the evidence, the forged documents, the poison, the money, the motive. Detective Cole listened without interrupting. When we finished, he sat back in his chair. "This is one of the most comprehensive cases of elder abuse and suspected homicide I've seen," he said. "You've done excellent work gathering this evidence. But I need to be honest with you, Mrs. Mitchell. Without a confession or direct evidence of the poisoning, a murder conviction will be difficult. Defense attorneys will argue the digoxin could have been accidental, that your husband could have taken it himself, that the timing is coincidental." "So what do we do?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. "We need them to confess, or we need to catch them in the act of trying again." "Trying to kill me, you mean?" "Yes." Linda started to object, but I held up my hand. "What would that involve?" You'd wear a wire, invite them over, try to get them to talk about what they did. It's dangerous. They've already killed once. If they suspect you're recording, I'll do it, I said. Dorothy, no. Patricia grabbed my arm. I'll do it, I repeated, looking at Detective Cole. Tell me what I need to do. Because I realized something in that moment. This wasn't just about proving Richard was murdered. This wasn't even about protecting myself. This was about making sure they could never do this to anyone else. That afternoon, I called Marcus. Hi, honey. I've thought about it. You're right. I do need help. Can you and Vanessa come over for dinner Sunday night? I want to sign those papers, and I want to talk about your dad. About everything. I could hear the relief in his voice. Of course, Mom. That's great. That's really great. We'll be there at 6. Perfect, I said, my voice steady even as my hands shook. I'll make pot roast, your dad's favorite. After I hung up, Detective Cole attached the recording device, a tiny microphone hidden under my collar, transmitting to receivers in an unmarked van parked down the street. Remember, he said, you need to get them to talk about specifics, the poison, the money, what they did. Can you do this? I thought about Richard, about 42 years of marriage, about how he'd tried to protect us and died anyway. Yes, I said, I can do this. Sunday was 3 days away. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to plan exactly what I'd say to get my son to confess to murdering his father. 3 days until I had to sit across the dinner table from my child and his wife and ask them why they killed the man I loved. Have you ever had to do something that terrified you? Something that went against every instinct? That's where I was. But I was ready. Because they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated me. The 3 days before that Sunday dinner were the longest of my life. I rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd act. Detective Cole came over twice to go through potential scenarios. Don't push too hard, he warned. Let them feel comfortable. Let them think they've won. People confess when they feel safe. Safe. The irony wasn't lost on me. Saturday afternoon, I went grocery shopping for the pot roast. Standing in the meat section of the supermarket, picking out vegetables like I was preparing a normal family dinner, I felt completely surreal. Was I really doing this? Was I really about to sit down with my son and try to get him to admit he'd murdered his father? My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Looking forward to tomorrow, Mom. It'll be good to have everything settled. Love you. Love you. I stared at those words until they blurred. Did he even know what love meant? Had he ever loved us? Or had we always just been obstacles between him and money? I texted back. Love you too, sweetheart. See you at 6. The lie tasted like poison. That night, Patricia came over. We didn't talk much. She just sat with me in the living room, holding my hand, both of us staring at the family photos on the mantel. Marcus as a baby. Marcus on his first day of school. Marcus at his wedding, Richard beaming beside him. You don't have to do this, Patricia said quietly. You have enough evidence. Let the police handle it. They need a confession, I said. You heard Detective Cole. Without it, a good defense attorney could create reasonable doubt. They could walk free. And if something goes wrong tomorrow, there'll be police right outside. I'll be wearing a wire. I'll be fine. But we both knew I might not be. Sunday arrived cold and gray. I spent the morning cooking, actually cooking, not just pretending. The pot roast, roasted potatoes, glazed carrots, fresh rolls. If this was going to be the last meal I ever shared with my son, I wanted it to be real. At 4 o'clock, Detective Cole arrived with 2 other officers. They attached the wire, a tiny microphone taped to my sternum, the transmitter hidden in a small pack at the base of my spine, under my blouse. We'll be in the van, Cole said. 1 street over. If anything goes wrong, if you feel threatened, just say the word Scotland. That's the abort signal. We'll come in immediately. Scotland. The trip Richard and I had planned. The trip we'd never take. I understand, I said. Mrs. Mitchell, Dorothy. He looked at me seriously. You're very brave. But don't take unnecessary risks. Your safety comes first. I nodded, but we both knew that wasn't true. Justice came first. At 5:45, I set the table. 3 places. The good china that Vanessa always admired. Crystal wine glasses, cloth napkins, everything perfect. At 5:58, I heard the car pull into the driveway. My heart started pounding so hard, I was afraid the microphone would pick it up. The doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there they were, Marcus in khakis and a button-down shirt, Vanessa in a tasteful dress, holding a bottle of wine, both smiling. Hi, Mom. Marcus hugged me, and I had to force myself not to stiffen. Something smells amazing. Pot roast, I said, stepping back to let them in. Your dad's favorite. Was, Vanessa corrected gently, touching my arm. Was his favorite. It's okay to use past tense, Dorothy. It's part of accepting the loss. I wanted to slap her. Instead, I smiled. You're right. Thank you, dear. Come on in. Dinner's almost ready. We sat down at the table, and I served the food, poured the wine, from the bottle they'd brought because I needed them comfortable, unsuspicious. I made sure to pour from the same bottle for all of us. For the first 20 minutes, we made small talk. Marcus told stories about work. Vanessa complimented the roast. I played the grieving widow, dabbing my eyes occasionally, accepting their comfort. Then, after dessert, I pulled out the folder with the power of attorney papers. I've been thinking about what you said, I began, my voice deliberately shaky, about needing help managing everything. You're right. It's too much for me. Marcus leaned forward, and I saw something flash in his eyes. Triumph. We're here for you, Mom. We'll take care of everything. I just have a few questions first, I said, about the estate, about the accounts. Of course, Vanessa said smoothly. What do you want to know? Well, I was looking through Richard's bank statements, and I noticed some transfers I didn't recognize. Large transfers to something called Mitchell Family Holdings Trust. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Marcus's smile didn't waver, but something shifted behind his eyes. Oh, that. Yeah, Dad and I set that up for tax purposes, estate planning. Really? Because I don't remember him mentioning it. He probably didn't want to worry you with the details, Marcus said. You know how Dad was about money stuff, always wanting to handle it himself. I nodded slowly, playing confused. I suppose. But the bank said the signatures looked odd. Vanessa's hand tightened on her wine glass. Odd how? Different from his usual signature. The bank manager suggested they might be. I paused, as if afraid to say it. Well, she used the word forged. That's ridiculous, Marcus said, his voice getting harder. Why would anyone forge Dad's signature? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to understand. I looked at him directly. Marcus, is there something you need to tell me? Are you in some kind of trouble? No. Mom, what are you? Because I found some papers in your car once. Credit card statements, gambling debts. Your father was worried about you. Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You went through my car. I'm your mother. I was worried. I kept my voice gentle, vulnerable. Talk to me, sweetheart. If you needed money, why didn't you just ask? Because there was never enough. The words burst out of him. There was never enough, was there? You and Dad sitting on millions while I was drowning in debt. Do you know what it's like to watch your parents live in this big house, taking vacations, buying whatever they want, while you're getting calls from collection agencies? Marcus. Vanessa's voice was sharp with warning. But he was wound up now, the pressure of the last weeks spilling out. I'm your only son. That money should have been mine eventually anyway. I was just accelerating the timeline. My blood ran cold. Accelerating the timeline? What does that mean? He stopped, seeming to realize what he'd said. Nothing. I meant, did you forge your father's signature, Marcus? Silence. Did you steal $800,000 from him? More silence. Then, he wasn't going to miss it. He had plenty. Oh God. Oh God. He'd actually admitted it. And the life insurance? My voice was barely a whisper. Did you change the beneficiary? Mom, you don't understand. Help me understand. I was shaking now, and it wasn't an act. Help me understand how you could steal from your own father, how you could... My voice broke. The Sunday dinners. He kept getting sick after the Sunday dinners. Vanessa stood up. Dorothy, I think we should go. He wasn't supposed to suffer, Marcus said suddenly, his voice defensive. It was supposed to be quick, painless, like a heart attack. He wouldn't have even known. The room spun. You killed him. The words came out flat. Dead. You poisoned your own father. He was old, Mom. He had a good life, and he was going to change his will. He told me he was going to cut me out because of the gambling. I couldn't let that happen. So you murdered him. It was supposed to look natural. His voice rose. It would have, too, if you'd just signed the cremation papers like you were supposed to. If that nosy mortician hadn't... He stopped. Hadn't what? I stood up, fury burning through my fear. Hadn't shown me the autopsy photos? Hadn't told me about the poison? Vanessa grabbed Marcus's arm. Stop talking. She's recording this. She has to be. Marcus's eyes widened. He lunged toward me and I stumbled backward. Scotland, I screamed. Scotland! The front door burst open. Detective Cole and 3 uniformed officers flooded into the dining room, weapons drawn. Marcus Mitchell, Vanessa Chen Mitchell, you're under arrest for the murder of Richard Mitchell and conspiracy to commit elder fraud. Marcus just stood there, his face pale as they handcuffed him. But Vanessa looked at me with such pure hatred that I took a step back. You stupid old woman, she hissed as they led her away. You should have just died quietly like you were supposed to. And there it was. Plan B. Confirmed. After they were gone, after I'd given my statement, after the police had left with all my evidence and recording, I sat alone in my dining room. The pot roast was still on the table, going cold. 3 place settings, a family dinner that had ended in handcuffs and Miranda rights. Patricia found me there an hour later. It's over, she said gently. You did it. But it didn't feel over. It felt like my entire life had just imploded. My son, my only child, the baby I'd held, the boy I'd raised, had murdered his father for money. And he'd been planning to kill me next. The week after Marcus and Vanessa's arrest was a blur of police statements, lawyer meetings, and forensic accountants going through every document I'd collected. Detective Cole called it one of the most well-documented cases of financial elder abuse and homicide he'd ever seen. Your husband left a trail, he told me. All those emails, all his suspicions, he was building a case himself. He just ran out of time. Richard had known. He'd been trying to protect us, and I hadn't seen it. The arraignment was scheduled for Thursday morning. Linda Chen, my lawyer, warned me it would be difficult. You don't have to attend, she said. You can stay home. Let the system work. But I needed to be there. I needed to look Marcus in the eye one more time. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights, wooden benches, the smell of old paper, and floor polish. I sat in the gallery with Patricia beside me, her hand gripping mine. When they brought Marcus and Vanessa in, both in orange jumpsuits, both in handcuffs, I felt my breath catch. Marcus looked thinner, pale. His eyes scanned the courtroom until they found me. For just a second, I saw something in his face. Shame? Regret? Or was I just imagining what I wanted to see? The judge read the charges. Murder in the first degree, elder financial abuse, forgery, conspiracy. The list went on and on. How do the defendants plead? Their lawyers, expensive ones I noticed, probably paid for with my stolen money, stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. Of course. Bail was set at $2 million each. I watched the judge's gavel fall, watched them lead my son and his wife back out of the courtroom. Marcus looked back at me once more before the door closed. I didn't look away. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Apparently the case had made the news. Elderly widow Foyle's son's murder plot was the headline I kept seeing. Cameras flashed, microphones were shoved in my face. Mrs. Mitchell, how does it feel knowing your son tried to kill you? Do you forgive him? What do you want to say to other elderly people who might be experiencing abuse? Linda pulled me away, got me to Patricia's car. But those questions haunted me. How did it feel? Like my heart had been ripped out. Like everything I'd believed about my life was a lie. Did I forgive him? I didn't even know how to begin answering that. The trial was set for 3 months later. Those 3 months were the loneliest of my life. I stayed in the house, our house, Richard's and mine, surrounded by memories. Marcus's baby pictures still on the mantel, his little league trophies in the den, the handprint art he'd made in first grade, framed in the hallway. How had that little boy become a murderer? I went to therapy. Dr. Sarah Brennan, a grief counselor who specialized in trauma and betrayal, met with me twice a week. You're grieving multiple losses, she told me. Your husband, your son, not to death, but to the realization of who he really is, your sense of safety, your trust in your own judgment. That's a lot to process. I keep wondering what I did wrong, I admitted, where I failed as a mother, what I could have done differently. Dorothy, you didn't create a murderer. Your son made his choices. Adults are responsible for their own actions. But it didn't feel that way. It felt like I should have seen it, should have known. The trial began on a Monday in late September. The courthouse steps were packed with media. I walked through them with Linda on one side and Patricia on the other, my head high even though I wanted to hide. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They presented the forged signatures. A handwriting expert testified they were unquestionably fraudulent. They showed the bank transfers, the timeline, the stolen $800,000. Then Dr. Tanaka took the stand. She was tiny in the witness box, her voice quiet but firm as she explained what she'd found. The petechial hemorrhages, the tissue damage consistent with digoxin poisoning, how she'd risked her career to preserve evidence because something felt wrong. Why did you do it? The prosecutor asked. Why risk everything to tell Mrs. Mitchell? Yuki looked directly at me. Because my grandmother was killed by her caregiver 3 years ago, suffocated with a pillow. We didn't know until it was too late because she'd already been cremated. I couldn't let that happen to someone else's family. I hadn't known that. I started crying right there in the courtroom. Then came the toxicology expert, who explained how digoxin works, how it mimics a heart attack, how the specific formulation found in Richard's system matched the type manufactured by Cardiopharm Solutions. The prosecution called Vanessa's supervisor from Cardiopharm. Yes, Vanessa had access to the medication storage room. Yes, there had been inventory discrepancies. No, her job didn't require her to access those medications. They played the recording from the Sunday dinner, my voice shaky and scared. Marcus's voice, defensive and then angry, his confession. He wasn't going to miss it, he had plenty. He was old, Mom, he had a good life. It was supposed to look natural. The jury's faces were stone. Then came Marcus and Vanessa's defense. Their lawyer, a slick man in his 50s named Robert Thornton, tried to paint me as a bitter, confused old woman who'd misunderstood everything, who'd entrapped her poor, innocent son. Mrs. Mitchell was grief-stricken, he argued. Paranoid. She imagined a conspiracy where there was none. Yes, Marcus took a loan from a family trust, with his father's permission. Yes, he helped his mother with estate planning. And yes, when confronted by his increasingly unstable mother, he said things he didn't mean out of frustration. He called a psychiatrist who testified about how grief can cause paranoid delusions in elderly people. He suggested that Richard had taken the digoxin himself, perhaps confused, perhaps suicidal over some undisclosed health issue. He painted Vanessa as a devoted daughter-in-law just trying to help. It made me physically ill. But then it was the prosecution's turn for rebuttal, and they called me to the stand. Walking up there, raising my right hand to swear to tell the truth, sitting in that wooden chair with everyone staring at me, it was terrifying. But I thought about Richard, about how he'd tried to speak up and no one had listened. Someone was going to listen now. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jennifer Walsh, smiled at me gently. "Mrs. Mitchell, can you tell the jury about your marriage to Richard?" "We were married for 42 years, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "He was my best friend. We'd planned to grow old together, travel, enjoy our retirement. He was healthy, happy. He had no reason to take his own life. And your relationship with your son, Marcus?" "I loved him." My voice broke. "I still do. He's my child. But what he did—" I looked directly at the jury. "What he did was not born from love. It was born from greed. Did you entrap him, as the defense suggests?" "No, I protected myself. After that young mortician showed me the evidence, after I found the forged signatures and the stolen money, I did what any person would do. I gathered proof. I went to the police. I let them guide me." "Were you paranoid? Delusional?" "I was terrified. My husband had been murdered. I was next. That's not delusion. That's survival." Jennifer walked me through everything. The timeline, the evidence, the Sunday dinners where only Richard got sick, the rush to cremate, the power of attorney forms they'd prepared before Richard was even buried. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Mrs. Mitchell, do you believe your son would have killed you if you'd signed those papers?" I looked at Marcus. He was staring at the table, his jaw tight. "Yes," I said quietly. "Yes, I do. Vanessa said as much when they arrested her. You should have just died quietly like you were supposed to." That was Plan B. Make it look like suicide from grief, or an accident. Get the life insurance money, the house, everything. And no one would have questioned it because I was just a sad old widow who couldn't cope. How does that make you feel? Like I don't know my own child. Like the boy I raised died a long time ago and I didn't notice. After my testimony, they called character witnesses. Patricia, my neighbors, Richard's business partners, all painting a picture of a sharp, competent woman, not someone prone to delusions. The defense tried to poke holes. They tried to suggest Patricia had influenced me, that I was being manipulated by lawyers seeking publicity. But the evidence was overwhelming. Then, in a move no one expected, Marcus asked to testify. His lawyer tried to stop him. I saw them arguing in heated whispers. But Marcus insisted. He took the stand, and the prosecutor approached him like a shark circling prey. "Mr. Mitchell, did you forge your father's signature on bank documents?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Yes," gasps from the gallery. His lawyer dropped his head into his hands. "Did you steal $800,000 from your father's accounts?" "Yes." "Did you poison your father with digoxin?" Silence. Long, horrible silence. "Mr. Mitchell, answer the question." "It wasn't supposed to be like this," Marcus said, his voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just needed the money. The debts were crushing me. I thought if I could just access Dad's accounts, pay everything off, he'd never even know. He had so much. But then he found out. He was going to cut me off completely. He was going to go to the police. I panicked. "So you killed him." Vanessa said it would look natural. She said digoxin mimics a heart attack perfectly. She said no one would question it because of his age. It was supposed to be painless, quick. We'd cremate him, there'd be no evidence, and life would go on. And your mother? What was your plan for her? Marcus looked at me then, really looked at me. His eyes were red, full of tears. I didn't want to, he whispered. I swear I didn't want to. But she wouldn't sign the papers. She started asking questions. Vanessa said... He stopped. What did Vanessa say? She said Mom was a liability, that she'd figure it out eventually, that we needed to make it look like suicide, grief-induced depression. It happens all the time with elderly widows. The courtroom was completely silent. So you were going to murder your own mother for money? I didn't know what else to do. His voice rose, desperate. The debts, the pressure, everything closing in. I couldn't think. I just kept following Vanessa's plans because she always knew what to do, and I was drowning, and He broke down completely. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this. I sat there watching my son sob in the witness box, and I felt nothing. No sympathy. No forgiveness. No love. Just emptiness where my child used to be. The defense rested. Closing arguments were brief. There wasn't much left to say. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood. We find the defendant, Marcus Mitchell, guilty of murder in the first degree, guilty of elder financial abuse, guilty of forgery, guilty of conspiracy. The same for Vanessa. Marcus didn't react. He just sat there, staring at nothing. But Vanessa turned to look at me, and the hatred in her eyes was so pure, so venomous, that Patricia had to hold me back from flinching. Sentencing was 3 weeks later. The judge, a gray-haired woman in her 60s who looked tired and sad, addressed Marcus first. Mr. Mitchell, you murdered your father in cold blood for financial gain. You stole from him. You planned to murder your mother. You showed no remorse until you were caught. This court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Marcus's face crumpled. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder. Mrs. Chen Mitchell, you were the architect of this scheme. You procured the poison. You coached your husband. You showed callous disregard for human life. This court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Vanessa didn't react at all. As they led them away, Marcus looked back at me one last time. His mouth moved. I think he said, I'm sorry. But it didn't matter anymore. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked me the same question they'd asked months ago. Mrs. Mitchell, do you forgive your son? And this time, I had an answer. Forgiveness isn't mine to give, I said quietly. That's between Marcus and God. What I have is justice, and I have my life, the life he tried to take. That's enough. The first night after the sentencing, I went home to an empty house and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. Not for Marcus, though maybe a part of me was still mourning the child I thought I had, but mostly for Richard, for the life we'd planned, for Scotland, for all those Sunday mornings and Thursday bridge games and quiet evenings on the porch that we'd never have now. I cried for the 42 years we'd had and the 20 more we should have gotten. Patricia stayed with me that first week. She didn't say much. She just made tea and sat with me and let me talk when I needed to and let me be silent when I didn't. What happens now? I asked her one morning. We were sitting in my kitchen, the kitchen where Richard had collapsed, where this whole nightmare had begun. Now you decide what your life looks like, she said simply. You're 67 years old. You have your health, your assets, your freedom. You get to choose what comes next. The legal aftermath took months to resolve. The district attorney's office helped me recover most of the stolen money, though the cryptocurrency Marcus had gambled away was gone forever. I donated half of it to organizations that fight elder abuse and support victims of financial crimes. The life insurance company paid out the policy. To me, the rightful beneficiary, once the forged documents were voided. I set up a scholarship fund in Richard's name for students studying business ethics. I sold the big house in Connecticut. I couldn't live there anymore. Too many ghosts, too many memories of Sunday dinners and forged signatures and my son planning my murder in my own dining room. I bought a smaller place 3 hours north, near the coast. A cottage with a view of the ocean, 2 bedrooms, a garden where I could plant vegetables, a place where no one knew my story unless I chose to tell them. Dr. Brennan, my therapist, said it was healthy. "You're not running away," she told me. "You're choosing peace. There's a difference." I invited Dr. Yuki Tanaka to visit me about 6 months after the trial ended. She drove up on a Saturday, nervous and quiet, clutching a box of expensive tea as a hostess gift. "You didn't have to come," I said, opening the door to my new cottage. "I wanted to," she said. "I wanted to see that you're okay." We sat on my porch overlooking the water, drinking tea, watching the waves. "I never thanked you properly," I said. "You saved my life. You risked everything, your career, your license, possible legal action, to tell a stranger the truth." "I couldn't live with myself if I hadn't," Yuki said quietly. "My grandmother, when she died, and we found out it was murder, the guilt nearly destroyed my mother. She kept saying, 'If only we'd known. If only someone had told us.' I couldn't let that happen to another family." "What happened to the person who killed her?" 5 years in prison, out in 3 for good behavior." Her voice was bitter. "That's why I became a mortician. I wanted to be the person who notices, who speaks up, who doesn't let people get away with it." "You're a hero," I said. She shook her head. "I'm just someone who did the right thing. You're the hero. You caught them. You made them face justice." We stayed in touch after that, email mostly, occasional phone calls. She became something like family, the kind you choose, not the kind you're born with. Patricia visited often. We started playing bridge again at a local community center with 2 women around our age who'd become friends. We didn't talk about the trial. We didn't talk about Marcus. We just played cards and gossiped about the neighbors and lived. I started volunteering at a senior center 3 days a week, helping elderly people review their financial documents, spot warning signs of abuse, understand their rights. Linda Chen, my lawyer, helped me develop a presentation about protecting yourself from financial exploitation by family members. "You're turning your trauma into purpose," Dr. Brennan said approvingly. "That's powerful." I testified before the state legislature about elder abuse laws, about the need for better protections, about how easily someone can steal from and harm their elderly relatives. They passed a new law requiring additional oversight for power of attorney documents and making it easier to prosecute financial abuse. They called it Richard's Law. I received one letter from Marcus about a year after his sentencing. It came to Linda's office. I'd moved and left no forwarding address for him. She called me before opening it. "Do you want to read it? I can screen it first if you'd like, or I can destroy it unopened. Your choice." I thought about it for a long time. Screen it. If it's manipulative or contains requests for money or visits, destroy it. If it's genuine, I'll decide then. 3 days later, Linda called back. It's an apology. He takes full responsibility. He doesn't ask for anything. He says he understands if you never want to speak to him again. He says he goes to therapy in prison, and he's trying to understand how he became capable of what he did. "Send it to me," I said. The letter was 3 pages long. Marcus's handwriting, the handwriting I'd taught him when he was 6 years old, guiding his small hand across the page. He wrote about prison, about therapy, about the moment he realized what he'd truly done. Not just killed his father, but destroyed our entire family. He wrote about gambling addiction, about how the debts had consumed him, about how Vanessa had manipulated his desperation into murder. He didn't excuse it. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said, "I am responsible. I made these choices. I have to live with them for the rest of my life. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I read it once. Then I put it in a box in my closet. I didn't respond. I didn't write back. Maybe someday I would. Maybe someday the wound wouldn't be so raw. But not yet. Do I still love him? I honestly don't know. Can you love someone and accept that they tried to kill you? Can you mourn the child they were while hating the adult they became? I don't have answers. What I do have is peace. I wake up every morning in my cottage by the ocean. I make coffee, I sit on my porch and watch the sunrise, I tend my garden, I volunteer, I play bridge, I have dinner with Patricia and laugh at her terrible jokes. I'm 70 now. 3 years since that day in the funeral home when Dr. Tanaka grabbed my wrist and changed everything. 3 years since I learned my husband was murdered and my son was the murderer. I'm stronger now than I've ever been. Not because of what happened to me, but because of what I chose to do about it. I chose to fight, to investigate, to risk everything to uncover the truth. I chose to protect myself and seek justice. I chose to keep living when it would have been so easy to give up. And I want you to know, whoever you are, wherever you're watching this from, that you can make those choices too. If you're being manipulated by family members, you can say no. If you're being pressured to sign documents you don't understand, you can refuse. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust your instincts. Seek help. You are not too old, not too confused, not too weak to protect yourself. You deserve dignity. You deserve respect. You deserve to live your life without fear of the people who are supposed to love you. Richard deserved that too, and I couldn't save him. But maybe, by sharing this story, by speaking up about what happened, I can help save someone else. So if this story resonated with you, if you've experienced something similar, or if you know someone who might be in danger, please share it. Please speak up. Please don't stay silent. And if you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for bearing witness. Please leave a comment below telling me where you're watching from, and if you found this story helpful, please like and subscribe. You never know who might need to hear this. My name is Dorothy Ann Mitchell. I'm 70 years old. I'm a widow, a mother who lost her son to greed and murder, and a survivor. And I'm not done living yet.